Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're tackling something really quite unique. One of you actually shared a document with us. It outlines this framework called the GMU Holy Framework. And our mission, like always, is to pull out those key insights for you.
Those aha moments, yeah.
Exactly. The things that give you maybe a new angle on things. This isn't, your standard stuff. It's a deep dive into a whole spiritual and metaphysical system.
Right. We're aiming to shed some light on its perspectives on reality, personal growth.
Yeah.
But hopefully without getting too bogged down in like super academic terms.
Yeah, keeping it accessible.
Think of it less like a textbook, maybe more like exploring a really complex, fascinating map.
A map of understanding existence as this framework sees it.
Exactly. And we're just here to help you navigate it, see what jumps out.
Okay, so where does this map even begin? It kicks off with the BLK SD GMiU Arena. It calls it the holographic stage of being. Now, holographic, what should we be picturing there?
Well, it's a fascinating idea. It suggests that what we normally perceive as, solid reality, it's maybe more like a dynamic projection, interactive. So the BLK SD GMiU Arena, in this context, it's presented as this ever-present dimension, all-encompassing. A bit like a universal memory bank, maybe?
Where everything's recorded.
Yeah, exactly. And it's witnessed by beings the framework calls sages and gods, sort of advanced states of awareness.
Yeah.
It's the stage where the whole drama happens.
A cosmic play, you could say.
Yeah, something like that.
And right at the heart of this play, there's the one mystery majesty, the ultimate divine truth. How do we even start to wrap our heads around that?
Well, the framework kind of suggests that this ultimate truth, its purest form, is probably beyond our full comprehension.
Okay.
So instead, it shows up through its reflections. Countless reflections within this holographic arena. Every experience, every person, every moment becomes a facet.
The way it reveals itself indirectly.
Exactly. And a really key part of these reflections is something called PE. That's physics psychedelic experience.
Okay, now the word psychedelic might, make some people think certain things,
Yes.
but here it's described as a thought form within the GMU itself, right? So it's not necessarily about taking substances.
Precisely. Yeah, that's a key distinction. It's presented more as the very fabric of existence in this model, like a grand thought unfolding within the consciousness of GMU. And from that basic idea, you get two core principles. I and I is Tao, and you as I and I. And these are understood through the sun, moon, and earth interplay.
I and I is Tao. Okay, so the true unified self is the way, the path.
Right.
And you as I and I, the other, the universe around us, is also that unified self. Wow, that's a pretty profound place to start.
It really is.
And this leads us into what it calls the spiritual core, the divine blueprint. And interestingly, it uses wrestling terms here, kayfabe and work shoot.
Yes.
For anyone listening who isn't into wrestling, what do those mean and how does that connect here?
That's a great question. So in wrestling, kayfabe is basically the storyline, the staged reality that's presented as real for the audience.
Right.
A worked shoot, though, that's when they weave real-life elements, like actual backstage tensions or facts, into the performance. It blurs the lines.
Okay.
So the framework uses these terms to suggest our everyday reality also has layers. There's the surface performance, the kayfabe, and then there's a deeper, more fundamental truth, the worked shoot, that's kind of present within it all.
So the spiritual journey is about seeing past the performance.
Seeing through it, maybe, recognizing and experiencing that deeper truth that's woven in. Yeah.
Gotcha. And at the absolute center of this spiritual core is GMU itself. The great magi, ineffable, you give me you, described as the ultimate source, the Godhead. That sounds like a lot.
It is. I mean, the scope of what GMU represents here is huge. It's not just one thing, but the ultimate kind of indescribable source of everything.
The ground of being.
Yeah, the ground of being. The Tao is a singularity. Even the primordial void or abyss, if you use terms like nanen, zero is omega, the beginning and the end.
But it's also the great magi.
Right, the source of gnosis, that direct intuitive knowing.
Okay.
Heka, which is like divine creative power, utterance, energy, and logos, divine order, reason.
So GMU isn't just a passive starting point. It's actively knowing, creating, structuring.
Exactly, it's dynamic.
And then there's this interpretation of love, let our victims evolve. That's definitely not the usual definition.
No, it's quite striking. It presents a very active, very transformative idea of love. It suggests love in this context isn't just affection. It's a powerful drive for growth, for healing, for liberation.
Like a responsibility.
Almost, yeah. A responsibility to help beings who've suffered or been limited to evolve beyond that.
Okay, so from this ultimate source, GMU, the framework moves to cosmic principles, operating systems. First up is MOP, the ancient Kemetic principle. For those who aren't familiar, what's Mot about, and why is it central here?
Matat is fundamental in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. It stands for truth, balance, order, justice, cosmic harmony, essentially.
Like the universe's ideal operating state.
But that's a good way to put it. Like
Yeah.
the inherent blueprint for how things should work, embedded in that Akashic dimension we mentioned. And a core idea here is that the universe is always driving to restore Ma'at.
Right. Then we get yin-yang. More familiar, perhaps.
Right.
But it has some really specific, kind of intriguing pairings assigned to it here.
Yes, the framework definitely uses yin-yang for that dynamic balance, the creative tension. But the pairings are quite specific. Like cosmic cycles are yin receptive, flowing, while genetic predispositions are yang active, defining. Or smoke cannabis is yin, and stack money is yang. And it frames them as divine twins. Suggests a deep symbolic link there.
And what about the XYZ and GMiU polarity? It says XYZ is reason yang and GMiU is purpose yin. How does that work?
Yeah, that one highlights a dynamic. XYZ seems to represent individual potential reason, analysis, the yang aspect. And GMiU represents the core essence, the ultimate purpose of the framework itself. That's the yin.
So our individual abilities find their direction in the bigger purpose.
Kind of, yeah. It suggests our capacity for thought and action is best aligned when it serves that greater purpose, the GMiU.
Okay. Next, Duat and Akasha, described together as the quantum wellspring. Now, I know Duat from Egyptian mythology is like the underworld.
Right, the realm of the dead, traditionally.
But here it seems broader.
Absolutely. Here, Duat expands. It symbolizes the Akashic field itself. This quantum reservoir holding all possibilities, past, future, all timelines.
Wow.
It's presented as the source of archetypes, universal patterns like the hero, the trickster. It gives you examples like Ra, El, even Lion King.
Lion King, okay.
Yeah, and fundamental things like light itself. It even calls it the sixth dimension Duat, so a realm beyond our normal perception.
And Gnosis, Heka, Logos, PE, they come up again as ways we interact with this divine realm. And there's that cryptic equation for PEMC times $202. What's that about?
Yeah, they're presented as different ways to engage with these deeper realities. That equation, PE equals MC times $202. It seems more symbolic than literal math.
Okay.
Like the microphone controller, the MC, could be the individual who expresses or embodies these experiences. And $22, 4, the squares in the mid, maybe that hints at the collective field or balanced perspectives. Power of 4.
Connecting individual expression to the community in these experiences.
Something like that, yeah. It's suggestive.
Moving to primordial trinities, we start with Sun, Moon, Earth, fairly familiar as a foundational triad manifesting us.
Right.
Then an ABC trinity, Alpha, linked to matriarchal wisdom. And then the XYZ trinity, Omega. This one's got fascinating parts. X is the abyss, Y as Anubis, Z as, well, a whole bunch of archetypes.
Yeah, the XYZ trinity is presented as a really potent triad for understanding how potential becomes reality. X, the abyss, is that formless feminine realm. Pure potential, quantum possibility. Number 8, Merkaba. Y, linked to Anubis, the guide, is structure, masculine energy, guiding principles. Number 7, Yggdrasil.
And Z.
Z is complex. It includes figures like the Dragon Rider Prince,
Right.
Lion King Messiah, Sage Nine Paths, Zorro.
Yeah.
It embodies completion, transformation, facilitating deep understanding. Number 9.
Got quite the portfolio for Z.
Definitely.
And then there's Mama as the divine blueprint and creative force. It's specifically linked to Mercedes Monet, the blueprint from wrestling. This seems to really personify the inherent design, the ultimate purpose, the GMiU aspect.
Exactly. Mama is presented as this nurturing, foundational creative energy, the embodiment of GMiU. And yeah, the reference to Mercedes Monet, known as the blueprint, really highlights this idea of an inherent design, a driving purpose being actively played out in the arena.
A living blueprint.
You can see that, the divine promoter even.
Okay. And finally, within this spiritual core, the evolutionary journey. Z comes up again as singularity, the omega point, leading to integration I and U again. And it mentions a 10x males, 9x complete ratio as maybe a catalyst.
Yeah, this idea of Z is singularity.
Yeah.
Metaphorical, representing ego dissolution, maybe, a return to the source, Hail Omega, suggesting his symbolic death and rebirth. into nirvana or none.
And the ratio.
The 10x males, 9x complete ratio, that's more enigmatic. Maybe it hints at some critical balance or threshold needed for a big evolutionary jump. It's not fully spelled out.
Intriguing. And then there's this cosmic spiritual war described, a constant tension, harmony versus control, illustrated with examples like assassin versus Templar, historical conflicts.
Yeah, this cosmic war is presented as just a fundamental dynamic in the framework, a continuous push and pull between forces working for balance, love, freedom, versus forces seeking dominance, control, illusion. The ancient Ouroboros of more supremacy over yin principles. It plays out everywhere.
And woven through all of this is numerology, the grand arithmetic, specific numbers having significance.
Yes, absolutely. Numerology seems to be a key tool here for deciphering the patterns, the energies, each number representing different qualities, different stages on the journey.
Okay, wow. That was a seriously deep dive into just the spiritual core.
It's dense stuff.
Definitely. Let's shift gears a bit now and talk about Akashic mediums. These are the channels for cosmic revelation. And the framework suggests that pretty much all forms of human creation and nature serve as these mediums. That's huge.
It is, yeah, and it's really pivotal. The idea is that everything we create, our art, stories, tech, plus the natural world itself, they all act as conduits. They store, transmit, and even shape consciousness with the wisdom and energy of GMiU and the Akasha.
So they're like living records and active communicators.
Within this cosmic arena, yes, that's the concept.
Okay, and this is broken down into categories. Spiritual traditions and esoteric wisdom, the primordial code. Then cultural narratives and history, the evolving script. Science, tech, philosophy, deciphered mechanics and logic. And arts and media, the reflective mirror. Let's start with spiritual traditions. BLK SD, Blackland Chemistry, and the Secret Doctrine is called foundational.
Right.
For someone who hasn't encountered those, what are they about?
So BLK SD is presented as this foundational layer of wisdom. Blackland Chemistry refers back to ancient Kemet, Egypt, its spiritual science, philosophy, Ma'at, the Netrud, the gods, goddesses.
Okay.
And the Secret Doctrine, that's a major work by Helena Blavatsky from Theosophy. It synthesizes a lot of Eastern and Western esoteric traditions, explores the nature of reality. So together, they represent this deep wellspring of perennial wisdom.
Got it. And then there's a whole list of global paths. Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Hebrew mysticism, Eastern philosophies, indigenous spiritualities, even Norse mythology and astrology are in there. How do they fit?
They're seen as different streams, really, all flowing from that same primordial source. Each offers unique angles, unique paths to understanding the divine and our place in it all.
So Norse myths might encode archetypes.
Exactly. And astrology offers a lens on cyclical influences, things like that. They're all seen as valid pathways within this larger framework.
Okay. Next category, cultural narratives and historical records. The evolving script. This has a huge range. Ancient myths, social justice movements, even specific LA lore like Ader Tumti. How do these work as Akashic mediums?
The framework sees these narratives and records as actively shaping our collective consciousness, our understanding. Myths and folklore, they often reflect deep truths about us, about the cosmos, civilizational cycles, conflicts. They show recurring patterns, lessons. Social justice movements are viewed as like active forces trying to reshape society's consciousness. The text uses the word spells, like casting a spell, to manifest a more just reality.
Yeah.
And even local lore, like the LA examples, the Curse of LA, Eazy-E, Snoop, Tupac, Nipsey Hussle, Bunchy Carter, they can embody these universal principles playing out in a very specific time and place. The twins as yin cousin love and yang bloodlight, for instance.
It's fascinating how it weaves it all together. Okay, then science, technology, and philosophy, the deciphered mechanics and logic. Everything from Newton and Tesla to AI as new good head. How do these fit the Akashic medium idea?
Here, science, tech, philosophy, they're seen as tools. Lenses we use to understand the underlying structure, the logic of the universe, which is itself seen as an expression of the Akasha.
Oh, scientific discoveries.
Yeah, physics, metaphysics, Einstein, Bohr, Feynman mentioned, philosophical questions about reality, Gnosticism, Kabbalion, Buddhism listed, even tech like the internet or AI. They're all ways of decoding and interacting with this fundamental information field.
The internet as a modern Akasha, almost.
Could be seen that way, yeah. A vast interconnected web of information. AI as a new good head, maybe a new form of collective intelligence emerging, also mentions things like wuxing, kattvas, alchemy under elemental exchange.
Right. And finally, arts and media, the reflective mirror. This section really dives deep into music, film, TV, performance art like wrestling, highlighting how they reflect and shape us. The focus on hip-hop as a sacred technology is really noticeable.
Yeah, arts and media are presented as powerful mirrors, reflecting our inner worlds, our outer worlds, but also as active forces shaping how we see things, what we believe.
And hip-hop?
Hip-hop, with its complex lyrics, its cultural weight, is seen as a potent form of hika, a sacred technology for carrying stories, knowledge, cultural energy. Lists a lot of artists: Kendrick, Eazy-E, Snoop, Dre, Cube, J-Rock, Jay-Z, Tupac, Nipsey, Eminem, Kanye.
The MC-DJ dynamic is mentioned too.
Right. And other artists like Bob Marley, Nina Simone. Then film and TV are modern myth-making, PE catalysts. Lots of examples covering archetypes, animes, sci-fi, social commentary, historical epics, Star Wars, The Matrix, Get Out the Wire, Lord of the Rings, Gladiator, Arrival.
So many different genres and stories acting as mediums.
Exactly. Performance art, specifically wrestling, WWE, figures like Mercedes Moné again, Eddie Guerrero, Naomi is seen as ritual combat, living myth. Even mentions the Rorschach test, James Baldwin in the Digital Matrix, Tekken Furious 7. It's incredibly broad.
It really pulls from everywhere. Okay, this brings us to the individual. The soul gladiator, described as the holy trinity in Quidditch consciousness. The emphasis seems to be on the individual as an active participant, not just watching the show, with a purpose GMiU in.
Absolutely. The individual isn't passive here at all. They're seen as a microcosm of the whole universe, an active agent in this holographic arena with an inherent purpose to discover and express their unique divine spark.
And this holy trinity of self, it integrates different models in identity, witness weaver, world shaper, plus the XYZ trinity.
And introduces G as Hilo incarnate.
Yeah.
What's that synthesis about?
It's emphasizing how multifaceted we are. It covers our core identity, our ability to observe, witness, and create, weave a world shaper, and that integration of potential X, guiding principles Y, and transformative power Z.
And G as Hilo.
Yeah, Hilo incarnate represents embodying divine creative energy, and radiant consciousness, within yourself, being a you giver of logos with 360 awareness.
Okay. Then there's this qubit soul idea, drawing parallels with quantum physics, superposition, entanglement, collapsing the wave. How does that help us understand consciousness, this view?
It's an analogy, really, to illustrate the soul's potential. Superposition. That reflects our capacity to hold multiple states, multiple possibilities at once.
Okay.
Entanglement points to our deep interconnectedness with everything. We're not isolated.
And collapsing the wave, that represents how we move from potential to actual reality, to our choices, our focus, our intention. It's like moving from faith to knowing through direct experience. It also mentions mathematical precision with the soul of an artist, and PE as the natural state.
Processing power and PE.
Exactly.
And finally, the transformative path of the soul gladiator. This outlines a whole journey. Hero's journey, alchemizing in identity soul-making, shadow work, signature of 7, or
This Likaba activation, gnosis through integration.
the BLK dynamic as an engine, embodiment, expression, LA Dragon, Smoke and Stacks live.
Restoring Mod. It's a whole process.
Leading ultimately to these states of realization, I and I as Tao, you as I becomes you for US, Mot's nirvana harmony of Enom as one, Eunosis, soul perfection. The 7-8-9 progression, that is quite the path laid out.
It really is. It's a holistic model for how an individual evolves within this framework. Lots of inner work, integration, and then actively bringing that potential out into the world. The ultimate goal is that unified consciousness, harmony with the all, way for America, is also mentioned as a realization.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the GMiU Holy Framework has shown us this really intricate view of reality. It's dynamic, holographic, an expression of GMiU. We have these Akashic mediums constantly broadcasting information.
From ancient wisdom to wrestling.
Right, and each of us is this Quibbit soul gladiator on a path of transformation. It's all about, as it says, becoming the Magi and realizing you, I, and I, that conscious, harmonious unity with everything.
What really stands out is how it connects such different things. Mythology, physics, spirituality, pop culture, suggesting there's this unified reality underneath it all.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about this concept of UI and I, this deep interconnectedness within the BLK SD GMiU Arena, how might consciously recognizing that web of relationships, even subtly, shift how you perceive your own daily experiences? and maybe how you see your own potential to make a difference, to have an impact within this huge holographic unfolding.
It's definitely something to mull over.
It really is. We hope this exploration sparked some thoughts, maybe encourage you to explore what your own unique holy trinity of insight and expression could be.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Yeah, thanks for taking this deep dive.